Hello, and welcome to our weekly sharing. I'm Mark, and this is my wife Sue.
Hello.
Black Lives Matter. How amazing it would be if the defining historical record for 2020 is this statement. That we remember 2020 for a pivotal moment in our UK and world culture rather than coronavirus lockdown. That from this point forwards, equality is normal and prejudice a notion that we teach to children as a warning, just as we teach World War II history to show where humanity went wrong and to know that we can never repeat those mistakes. The image of George Floyd being arrested has shocked us and rightly spurred individuals and communities to say enough is enough. However, do you know the stories behind the names of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, who also died at the hands of police in 2020? Have you heard of Trayvon Martin, who died in 2013, and after the acquittal of his alleged police killer led to the formation of the international human rights movement, Black Lives Matter? We have to say that it is only from choosing to listen to the message of BLM with our heads and our hearts that we've begun to appreciate the wider stories and the pervasiveness of prejudice. Marriage Encounter lives by the gospel verse, love one another as I have loved you. A message that rebounds through 2,000 years of Christian history and is as relevant today as it was when Jesus spoke it as a Jew under Roman occupation. The message Christ gave us is so simple, but throughout history, religion has been used as a power base, as a cause for oppression, and sadly that is part of our Christian heritage. Fortunately, the rise of ecumenism has broken down barriers and led to mutual support and joint action against today's problems, such as poverty, modern slavery, and radicalism. We've heard many people say, well, all lives matter, not just black lives. And yes, of course, this is true. The point is, though, that now, in this moment, we need to assert that black lives matter, because the message that all lives matter, time and time again, doesn't include so many people. Until such time as we can honestly say all lives matter, then we need to highlight prejudice, oppression, and injustice time and time again without relent.
Many of us have feelings of poor self-worth and struggle with confidence. On an encounter weekend, we discover the motto, God does not make rubbish. And when we believe it of ourselves, it can be transforming. Do we challenge ourselves, though, to believe this of others, of all people? Born in the latter part of the 60s, we went to school in the 1970s and 80s. Imperialism was already being acknowledged as oppression, but not once were we taught about Black history. When we see clips of television programs from those times, they are crushingly racist. Thankfully, society has moved on, and our personal viewpoint too. However, the legacy of a 1970s education means that we must push against innate beliefs and extend our understanding of a still prevalent issue of racism, oppression, and injustice. Pondering George Floyd's death and Black Lives Matter, we decided to dialogue on the question. What is my reaction to the news around Black Lives Matter? What are my thoughts and feelings? Is there a change I need to make in my life? And this is what I wrote. This is a hot topic at the moment for some people. But for me, when I eventually saw it on the news, yes, I was horrified and shocked. But not because it was a white policeman kneeling on a black man's neck for a long time. It was because that one person could do that to another while others just stood by and watched. This reminded me of the story in the Bible of Saul, St. Paul, standing by and watching Stephen being stoned to death. Shortly after, he had a conversion. Yes, I know he was not immediately a Christian, and that it takes time to change and adapt. Then I started to see all lives matter rather than Black Lives Matter. And I thought, yes, that is so right. But what got me thinking a little differently was something I came across on Facebook about rainforests being lost and needed to be saved. But just as important were other forests around the world. But at this very moment, it is the rainforest that needs help. So to say that all lives matter is taking away from the injustice of the Black Lives Matter statement. I know that there is prejudice in all walks of life. There's been a lot in my life growing up. That is why I try to accept people for where they are in that moment in time. Take them as they come. I try to learn from my mistakes. I've learnt that losing my temper does not help me or anyone else. In fact, it makes me feel worse, which makes me wonder how George Floyd's family are and how they feel about the protests done in George's name. I'm sure they value the dignified demonstrations, but would they want the violence and aggression that some are showing to be connected to George's memory? It leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, a sadness that this is still happening, uncomfortable that I had not taken more notice, a feeling of helplessness. But it makes me more determined now that in our own lives, when we have a disagreement, I will try to be more openly, to listen more openly with my heart, mind, ears, and soul, than from us onto my everyday life. I know that I cannot change the world, but small steps are a start.
In my letter, I wrote, I'm not shocked by George Floyd's death, but I am horrified. Not being shocked is a concern that such news is more frequent than I am aware of, that it's part of the normal news panorama. I'm angry though, gut-wrenching, steaming angry. As ever though, my aversion to showing anger means I hold it in. I notice though that watching news, reading accounts, quickly brings a tear to my eye. I just don't understand how one human can be so barbaric to another. It's not law and order, it's not justice, it's ignorance, prejudice, and outright inhuman cruelty, none of which can be excused today. As a child educated in the late 1970s, I knew when I watched certain TV programs dubbed as comedy that I felt uncomfortable with what we now understand as blatant racism. But I had no words for it, no idea how to express what I was seeing. I remember reading 1960s children's novels about African missionaries and not being able to understand why the black African characters were always subservient to the white English doctor. I just didn't have the experience of life to understand the subtext of colonialism. I've been fortunate to work in rich multi-ethnic environments that enlightened my early education and helped me understand the power dynamic of racism, of abuse and oppression. However, the more I understand, the more I realize I know less and need to keep on learning. I need to keep on challenging myself and speaking out. I'm not someone who is able to deal with conflict very well. I really try to avoid it. Instead, I'm more likely to demonstrate my view in my actions and in my daily conversations. I cannot support violence as a way of protest. I don't believe it's right, and it diverts attention from the real issue. It creates a get-out argument for anyone who cannot see the injustice. I applaud the individuals who have been protesting in large numbers across the country in organised and dignified statements that show Black Lives Matter. I've had some uncomfortable discussions with those around me, and this time I've not avoided the conflict of opinion. I hope I've given clear arguments that have stood up for the values of BLM. More than ever before, I know I must stand up and be counted.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our sharing today. As a movement, Marriage Encounter offers hope for every relationship through our weekend retreats, but most importantly, through our open and welcoming community as we live by love one another as I have loved you.